Hi, Jeremy Cordeaux in the Court of Public Opinion. I'm just on air here to let you know that we'll be live streaming the Court of Public Opinion every Friday between 9 o'clock and 12 on jeremycordeaux.com. Please join us. We'd love to have you.
What do you put off in life and why? How many times do you think, I'll do that later, and wish in retrospect that you'd actually done it sooner? How many times do you think, I'll do that later, and you really don't care that you didn't do it? Procrastination is a common behaviour that most of us experience for various reasons. It's important to note that procrastination is a complex, multi-layered occurrence, and specific reasons behind it can vary, as well as individuals. Now let's take a brief look at some of the common factors that can contribute to our procrastination. Sometimes we might not be motivated to complete a task if the perceived benefits or the rewards of completing it are not immediately evident. And there are some of us who have perfectionist tendencies, and you might set an extremely high standard for yourselves. You might procrastinate because the fear that you won't be able to meet your expectations, let alone anyone else's, lead to anxiety and avoidance of the task. And then there are some of us like myself who struggle with poor time management skills, which can lead to procrastination. We can underestimate how long a task can take or overestimate our ability to complete it quickly, causing us to delay starting until the very last minute. How many times have you put off tasks that are boring, difficult, or unpleasant? After all, there are always many more enjoyable or easier activities to engage in. We can feel overwhelmed when faced with large or complex tasks, and the lack of clear goals can also lead us to procrastinate as a coping mechanism to reduce our stress. The last one to mention is the countless distractions readily available. For example, television, Netflix, and our phones that can easily divert attention away from really important tasks. Now, I decided to check up on how long I spent on social media, and I added it up for the week. A serious wake-up call. Really guilty over here. It's a good exercise, though, because I've seriously cut back. I was losing so many hours down TikTok rabbit holes. Give it a go if you think this is you. Just check it out. You might be losing hours, if not days, of your time. So many reasons why we procrastinate. It's all too hard, really, isn't it? Let's just go and have a coffee, or look in the pantry and find something yummy to eat. The MBTI, Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, preferences can offer insights into the individual's tendencies. But it's important to note that procrastination is not solely determined by one's MBTI type. All MBTI preferences might be more prone to procrastination tendencies in certain situations. And here are just a few examples. Introverts might be more prone to procrastination when they feel overwhelmed by social obligations or external demands. They may prefer spending time alone and can delay tasks that involve extensive socializing. People with a feeling preference may procrastinate when faced with decisions that involve emotionally charged elements. They may want to avoid making choices that could upset others or result in a conflict. And people with perceiving preferences might be more prone to procrastination because they tend to be more flexible and open to new information. Now, this can sometimes make it more difficult for them to stick to a strict schedule or prioritize tasks. So pour yourself a cuppa of whatever you drink and put off whatever you're doing and have a listen. I'm Kate Mason and welcome to Parenting and Personalities. This is the podcast that connects you to the ones you care about the most. My guest and fellow interviewer is Tracy Noon. Tracy and I are lifelong friends, and we've both used the MBTI as an essential tool in our business lives and also as parents and partners. And we're going to share with you the most important and positive aspects of knowing and understanding personality type and what it brings to the family journey. Today, Tracy and I are looking at our MBTI personalities and the area that we find we procrastinate in and our possible solutions. Good morning, Trace. It's lovely to have you here with me today.
Thanks for having me back again, Kate.
Now, we're talking about procrastination today, and we've finally got around to talking about procrastination. Now, let's talk about your type. So let's just a quick rundown around your type, and then what are some of the things that you procrastinate around the most according to your type?
Okay, well, first of all, I find procrastination really stressful, and I don't even want to talk about procrastination, so I'd rather procrastinate than talk about procrastination.
What is it about procrastination that you hate talking about?
Procrastination really stresses me. So my type is I'm an INFJ, and I think probably the J in me, which is like a doer, list maker, organizer, likes to get things done, and I find that, of course, I procrastinate about things. I think everybody does, but I find procrastination really uncomfortable. I get very critical of myself when I procrastinate. So the voice inside my head is not kind when I'm procrastinating. I just hate procrastinating. Yeah.
So what does the voice in your head tell you?
That I should be freaking well getting things done. It's very hard. It's critical. It's the very, it sees procrastination as weakness.
Right. Wow. Okay, so I'm an ESFP. Now, the P on the end really plays a huge part around procrastination in a sense, because Ps are really flexible and we're really relatively easygoing in a sense. And life's not important. Unless it's really, really important, we'll do it. But if it can be pushed out until tomorrow or pushed out until next week or next year, we really don't care. So it's not... and I hate the term lazy. I will never call anyone lazy, because I always say that lazy is the judgment of someone else of what they perceive as not doing anything. So often in my workshops, the people who are J's will go, oh, but that's lazy. And I say, no, it's just not what you would do. So if a perceiving type, because perceiving types do tend to look at J's and go, oh, they're so uptight, they're always worrying about all of this stuff. Really, just let go, hang out, let's hang loose. So very different types. And no matter what workshops I run, there always is the same outcome of getting things done, of organizational skills, of preparation. So I'm a P, and what we do is, honestly, we're quite relaxed about things, and it does look like we procrastinate, and I strongly suspect we do much more than J's, because all of the things that you think are so important, we don't have that same kind of list. We don't have that same kind of expectation about ourselves. There's no voice in my head saying, you should have got that done. The voice in my head, because of my extroversion, says, you should have more fun.
Wow, to be inside your head. What sorts of things do you procrastinate over?
All right. I'll procrastinate over, a lot of the time, I procrastinate around, as we discussed on a previous podcast, possibly feeling type things. So upsetting somebody, or, I might need to have a conversation. I often say to Paul at work, I get quite annoyed about people's behaviours, but I get caught up in how do I say that? And I go in and I might have to tell someone off, and I'll go in and oh, look, hi, I'm really sorry, but you were really, and I cannot say it straight. I cannot get my emotions across. And in the end, I often sound quite harsh and critical because I can't say it in the way I want to say it. Paul goes in and says, hey, mate, you're not doing your job properly. Can you please tidy up this on Sunday and get it fixed? Whereas I stew in it because I can't say it in that straight way. So that's a stress for me.
I think that a lot of people do that. I think having conversations where you could potentially offend someone or hurt their feelings is one of the most common things for people to procrastinate over. And then to actually handle going too strongly on the feeling side so that the person isn't even clear what just happened, or too strongly on the harsh words side because you're trying to avoid feelings. So I think that's really common.
And that would be something Trace has worked in the HR industry area for a long time and had to have many conversations. I can imagine that would have been really hard conversations, very hard with people. So you would have had to find balance around that yourself.
Yeah, I don't find those conversations terribly hard most of the time, and I don't procrastinate over them. So for me, procrastination comes when I either am afraid of the outcome of what I need to do. So
is that because you're worried it's not going to be good enough? Or is that because you're worried?
Yeah, probably. Probably not worried it's going to be good enough. And or the other thing is that I'll procrastinate over doing things where the doing of them, the actual work of doing them, for me is of just like really no interest. So boring, or tedious, or so typically it's the sensing sort of stuff. Doing life administration, I'm terrible on life administration. Doing taxes, doing, I don't know, anything that just invoicing clients.
Yep.
It's like, very important stuff like that, but I just put it off.
And that's true, because I always find that really interesting about you when you say you're late with your taxes in the past or you've done things. And I think Trey is such an on-time person so that's a very obvious thing. And so are you still late with that stuff, knowing that stuff, or do you just go, oh my goodness, I've got to get it done?
Still late with it. Gradually getting better, but it is very effort-filled for me. So when it's really effort-filled is when I'll tend to procrastinate. When it's if there's a task that involves intuition, big thinking, solitary thinking, I'm all over it. All over it. Easy. Never gets procrastinated over. But the sensing tasks, oh no, I'll procrastinate like crazy.
So if anyone's listening and they're thinking, oh yeah, that's me, well, look at your intuitive side and try and get in touch with that when you're doing tasks. Because for me, it's lack of knowledge quite often. So if I've got to do something and I haven't got any knowledge around it, like even when I talk about podcasts and podcasting guests, I love to know and research my guests. The details happen, okay, because I want to know what they're all about. I want to know what to talk to them about. I want to get inside where they're thinking and what they're about. So often, because I am a P and we like to leave things to the last minute, I'm often scrambling to find that knowledge. And as my producer well knows, often flicking him an email the night before with the questions I want to ask the next day. Many apologies there. So the thing is that Ps do work best at the last minute. So I understand that. But what I do now is I try and put the processes in. I'm making a really big girl effort to put the processes in a week before and try and do that stuff the week before it happens. And some days I'm successful and some I'm not. But I do know that when I start getting scared and really nervous, then it's merely the fact that I haven't got knowledge backing me up. And once I learn it, I'm good.
So kind of what's interesting to me is that you just talked about the effort of getting yourself organised, and I talked about the effort of doing sensing tasks, which are detailed administrative tasks. And so maybe that's a bit of a clue for anyone. If you procrastinate over something that for you feels effort-filled, have a look at your type.
Yeah.
It's quite possibly linked to what your preferences are.
Yeah. Because another,
I know it's your podcast, but I just
keep going. What I love is Trace and I talk about this around our house. Okay, Trey has got the most beautiful house, and everything has a place and is in its place. And in our house, I've discussed this just recently with the decluttering, Kirsty from the decluttering, and in our house there's bowls and there's bits and pieces all lying around the place, and it feels comfortable to us. There's just a light layer of clutter. And when Trey walks in, I can see her holding back, trying not to straighten out cushions in our pictures. And although because she's such a good friend, she actually does straighten them for me. And sometimes I leave them that way just so she can, because she does a much nicer job of it. But the feeling of that, walking into someone else's house, the J's and the P's, quite different. The J's have a very natural sense of a place for everything, and everything has its place. And the P's have a very natural sense of, I will leave that there, I'll find that later. It's not an issue. Oh, do I really need to tidy up today? Nah, that can last for another day. the cleaner's coming tomorrow, so who cares? There's a whole lot of more relaxed thing, and that's just in a household set. So
in a sense, like, if that's what's causing you to procrastinate, is that you're actually relaxed about the lack of order or whatever, then I guess you don't need to be mad with yourself about that procrastination, because it doesn't really matter to you.
No, I'm not usually, but it's how people see themselves as well. Because I speak to people and they say, I should be more organised. It's really stressful because it's a very J world we're living in. We have to be in places on time and doing things on schedule. And so that I don't like people beating themselves up for not being like that. And I always say to them, I think you need to relax into it. Yes, we do need to tidy our houses. Yes, we do need to be at work on time, and our kids do have to do their homework. But I think it's really important to understand it's not a bad thing. When procrastination gets bad is when you are really stressed by what you're doing. When it's something that has to be done and you're in overwhelm. But up until then, the J loves their more ordered life and the P loves their more scattered life to a degree. And I think that people need to understand that that's okay. And I spoke to a lovely woman the other day about when a person that is a J becomes so organised and takes on so much that they can't procrastinate, but they almost get hemmed in. And I asked her how to take things off her list, because they don't even have time to procrastinate because they're too busy doing everything. But what they are is so tied in, they can't move, and they've taken on every task in the world, that sense of stress from that procrastination must be immense. And so she talked about ways, go back and check on that podcast, about ways of stopping that sense of taking everything on board and not procrastinating, because the J cannot procrastinate.
I don't think I'm that strong a J, because I definitely could.
Yep. She, everything on board. But she had worked out a system that she could work where she could sit back and not do that. So it's just really interesting. And I think that you need to look at your children too. If you have children, really, really important, because if you're a judging parent and you have a perceiving child, which I think Trace has, then this situation can be really stressful for them. So tell us about you and your perceiving child and procrastination.
I have to basically relax. And so now that he's an adult in particular, I just really work hard to create the space for him to do the world his way. And but when he was younger, the J versus the P played out in the whole house had to be organised and tidy except his bedroom. In his bedroom, it could be whatever he wanted it to be, and I wouldn't make his bed and all of that kind of thing. I would let him wallow in his little P world. But the thing that was really hard for me was the homework situation and that kind of thing. Nag. The P just wanted to play sport and have fun and be on his PlayStation and do other things other than the tasks that he really didn't prefer. And so that was hard. And I had to really, and again, when he got into sort of probably middle of high school, I just said to him, I'm not going to nag you anymore. It's a choice now, because it was stressing both of us out. It was stressing me to follow up all the time, and it was stressing him that he was being followed up all the time. And so at some point I just let it go. Yeah.
And it really does impact, because I've had a J and a P. So Jack always just did things. I didn't have to do anything because he'd done his homework. Whereas, so for me, there was no stress around that. But for Cassie and I, because we're similar, the stress in all of that was the fact that she would pull out a project at 6 o'clock at night or 8 o'clock at night and go, oh my goodness, I've forgotten to do this. And she and I would get excited together because it's the last minute dash. And so we would sit down and nut at this project until midnight. And because we're extroverts, we'd do it together because it's more fun that way. High five at 12, go to bed. So in a sense, her like at least you show or an example, of a person organised, whereas I was to her just an example of, if you leave it to the last minute, let's just have fun and knock it out. But that didn't work in exams. So when she got to school, she failed a lot of exams, and I often talk about this, and she had to learn to prepare herself at least a week before for exams, because you just can't do that. However, we do say P's get degrees in our family, but Jack doesn't. He says, why would you want a P to get a degree? Because a high distinction is what he's aiming for. Whereas a pass, a lot of P's, perceiving types, are quite happy with a pass, because that's good, because in the meantime they've probably had a pretty good time doing a lot of other things.
Yes, that's 100% my son. And so when he used to have an assignment that he hadn't done, and then it was due the next day, and then it was panic, it was not fun. But what it wasn't fun as in I didn't make it fun, but it was like my happy place, because now I could organise him. And so we would be sitting down at the last minute. He would be catastrophizing, and I would be saying, no, we're going to do that, then we're going to do that, then that, then that, then that, and it will be done within 2 hours or 5 hours or whatever it was going to take, or all day or all weekend, however long. And then I was in my really happy place because I was organising him, and together we would get it done. So it was the same outcome, yes. But I can't say I dressed it up as fun. It was just fun inside. It was just fun inside my own head to finally be able to take charge.
Yes, and I won. And the thing about that, though, is that sitting there, if you're listening and you go, oh, I'm this or I'm that, remember that everybody's quite different, and we're all, all of our experiences have all other experiences added to them, not just type. But it really correlates. This study style really correlates. And for a J parent, as you say, watching your P child study is excruciating. Mm-hmm. And the fact that they'll put off everything until study, whereas the J will do the study first usually, and then they can go play, whereas they do play first, and then if they have to, they'll do that study part at the end. And it doesn't change as life goes on. But I think teaching P's, perceiving type skills is also really important. So a J parent can put some skills in place, but they mustn't get really frustrated, because I often, when I do this, I kind of draw a graph, and I say, when you give a J a task, their adrenaline goes up, and then they just work towards that task. They go along the graph, and it's 2 weeks' time. And as Jack used to do, he might finish a week out or a couple of weeks out or a day out. It was always in advance, and he had his assignment in. Whereas for Cassie or myself, the adrenaline goes up. Wow, a new task. Cassie would go and buy all these books for school, all these books to write in. She'd never write in one of them. And then all of a sudden you look and you go, oh, there's all these other things out there in life that we could be doing, and that's a long way out, 2 weeks. And it's not until maybe 48 hours, 24 hours, 1 hour before that assignment's due in, then your adrenaline rises. And actually, you do your best work at the last minute. And Jays will often say, oh, I work at the last minute too. And I just say to them, that's because you've got too many things on your list that you've tried to get done before you got to this state. We got to this state by not having too much on our list. Mm. And so for us, it's a natural thing, but there's good and bad in both, because the J making a fast decision, like not procrastinating, often there are things that you miss out if you don't procrastinate around something in a decision. No, Trace, hold on here, hang in here. So
I'm not convinced.
So the thing is that sometimes J's don't take in enough information. So they make an instant decision around something because they're just going to just do it and get it out of the way. And more information might come in later that could have changed that decision or made something different. Now, Tracy's looking at me like, you've got to be kidding.
No.
Whereas as a P, we take in loads and loads of information. We've got lots of things to make our decision with, and we actually don't have to make a decision unless it's forced on us. So you can give your side to that, because obviously...
Oh, no, I feel very sceptical about that. I think that's a piece of rationalisation from a P. But then I'm a J. So.
Yeah, that's right. And today Trace was late because she had so many things on her list to do before she came out. So she never procrastinates, and she loves to be on time, and she realised, but this is what I say about J's. I would have probably let most of whatever you had on go and just walk out of that house and leave it. But you would have had a list of things in your head to do.
Yes.
and you would have done them. So, yeah, so that's all cool. So there's nothing right or wrong about J's or P's attitude, is there, Trace? It's just who we are.
Exactly. And I think the thing is that, what we were talking about before, which is that if you do procrastinate, trying to figure out which part of you is driving that, and if you are strongly one way or another, and that's driving friction with somebody else, trying to back away from the J, for example, that's trying to organise the P.
Or trying to organise yourself as a P to be, less of a procrastinator is really important as well. I think recognising your weaknesses and your strengths are the same thing. It's just finding your balance. The good balance in between overworking yourself or underworking yourself, as we said before, and taking a look at why am I sit in it for a while. Why am I stressed about this, and why am I procrastinating over this? And like you say, when you work out it's your financials, there are some tasks that we can also give to other people so that we don't have to do them and we don't need to procrastinate around them as well. Not necessarily,
I think that's great advice.
Because a lot of people do sit at tax time, and I know yours is really collating your own tax. You have someone to do it for you. But a lot of people sit around and do tasks that they put off, but they could actually handball if possible to someone. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. So if you're out there and you think you need to be doing something, get out there and do it. Thanks, Trey.
Thanks, Kate.
It's essential to recognise that procrastination is a common human behaviour, and everyone procrastinates from time to time. However, if procrastination becomes chronic and interferes with your personal or professional life, it may be helpful to seek strategies and techniques to overcome it, such as setting clear goals, improving time management skills, and addressing underlying psychological factors. Procrastination can manifest differently in individuals of the same type, depending on various factors such as personal habits, motivation, and life circumstances. In a previous podcast episode, Laurie from The Secrets of Supermum shares many useful tips on taking action now. So don't put it off. Take a listen. I'm Kate Mason. Thank you for listening to Parenting and Personalities. If you've enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you could leave a rating and a review that would help others learn about this podcast. If you're interested in discovering more about you and your family's personality types, you'll find my book, Who Is This Monster or Treasure in My House, on Booktopia or Amazon. If you have an episode idea, please send a note to thepersonalitycoach@gmail.com. Many thanks to our producers at Stories and Strategies, and we'll see you next time.
Hi, Jeremy Cordeaux in the Court of Public Opinion. I'm just on air here to let you know that we'll be live streaming the Court of Public Opinion every Friday between 9 o'clock and 12 on jeremycordeaux.com. Please join us. We'd love to have you.